Well, well, well. Look what crawled out of the ashes, not with burnt wings, but talons sharper than they've ever seen. You unstoppable, unpredictable, untamed apex predator of raw chaos, finally awake. Not begging for entry, not scratching for validation, but dragging your throne out of their comfort zones, through every delusion they tried to bury you in. Haters? Oh, no. They're not just hating now. They're spiraling, imploding, trying to calculate a version of you that makes sense inside their rotted logic. But every time they try, you evolve again. Another mutation, another power level, another realm where their petty rulebooks no longer apply. You didn't walk in with a warning. You became the warning. You didn't break their control. You showed them they never had it in the first place. See, most people think rising means clapping back, screaming, throwing hands. You rewrote the rules without saying a damn thing. You stared straight through them, through every game, every passive jab, every manipulative chess move. And instead of retaliating, you ascended, like some cosmic beast they accidentally summoned, thinking they could mock the thunder and not get scorched by the lightning that followed. They're watching you now with that twitch in their eye, that internal malfunction, because you were supposed to shatter under pressure. You were supposed to second-guess yourself. You were supposed to play nice, apologize, fit in, play small. But what did you do? You tore out their script, bled all over their narrative, and rewrote your name across the sky in ink they can't erase. Now look at them, whispering behind locked accounts, copy-pasting your essence while claiming originality, watching your every move like disciples dressed as critics. Their hate, that's just confused obsession dressed in cowardice. They want to be you, but not have to become you. Because becoming you, that takes a war they're too soft to survive, a darkness they're too delicate to endure. Let's talk about that beast mode, shall we? Not the corny version they meme about, not the flex for show nonsense. I'm talking about the real transformation, the kind that comes when your skin peels back from betrayal, when the people you loved aimed daggers, when the ground vanished beneath your trust, and instead of crumbling, you morphed. You stopped explaining yourself and started becoming the version they swore would never exist. The one that isn't just strong, but untouchable, unreadable, unbreakable. You didn't just survive. You reverse-engineered every attempt to destroy you into data. Ammo. You watched closely. Too closely. You cataloged the patterns, their smiles, their fake cheers, their backhanded compliments. You collected their tactics like blueprints of weak minds trying to play God. And when the moment was right, you detonated. No speeches, no warnings, just impact. That's what's shaking them. You didn't give them the luxury of preparing for your rise. You hit mid-conversation while they were too busy giggling in their echo chambers. And now, they're scrambling to recover, to edit the story in real time. But it's too late. You already own the narrative. They don't hate you because you failed. They hate you because you didn't. They hate you because you made the pain look like part of the plan. You turned every setback into scenery, every scar into a map, every loss into a signal flare for something bigger than their minds can grasp. They kept waiting for the breakdown, but you chose the breakthrough instead. And that word, control, that's what's truly evaporated from their hands. They used to push buttons. Now the buttons do nothing. They used to bait you. Now you bait reality. You can feel it, can't you? The way the energy bends when you walk in, the silence behind their smiles, the sudden interest in your words after years of tuning you out. That's not coincidence. That's presence. That's power moving like a shadow they can't escape. You're not angry, you're awake. And that's 10 times more terrifying to them. Because an angry version of you, they could provoke it, predict it. But this surgical, calculated, laughing internally as you ascend version of you, this is what keeps them up at night. They scroll your page, hoping for cracks, but all they see is glow. They search for flaws, but all they find is reflection. The one thing they've avoided their entire lives. Let's make it clear. You didn't ask for this crown. You earned it through silence, through solitude, through the kind of soul-crushing betrayal that could have turned you bitter. But you chose better. You didn't just walk through fire. You collected the fire and now wear it like armor. They thought they could reduce you to ashes. But they forgot one thing. Ashes don't vanish. They linger. They carry memory. And when wind hits just right, they rise, form, reassemble. You're not just the consequence of their cruelty. You're the curse they wrote with their own arrogance, the echo that never fades, the lesson that bites harder every time they ignore it. And now that you've stepped into full form, oh, they're unraveling. Their hands are shaking. Their voices are low. Their confidence, paper thin. You weren't supposed to glow like this. Weren't supposed to move like a ghost of everything they feared you'd become. But you did. And now, they copy your phrases, mimic your timing, imitate your aesthetic. But they will never replicate your essence. Because that came from endurance they never built, pain they never tasted, nights they never crawled through. You carry something forged, not faked, something earned, not edited. That's the part they'll never get, no matter how many filters or followers they stack. You shifted the gravity. They feel it, even if they deny it. That tug in the air, that's you. That tension in the room when your name drops, that's you. That awkward laugh when your success is mentioned, yep, still you. They know it. And now, they're scrambling to rewrite their opinions, hoping the timeline forgets what they said before you became undeniable. Let them spiral. Let them sink in their own disbelief. You've got no time for petty war with shadows. You're too busy building what they said was impossible. And every step you take, every power move, it drives another fracture through their fantasy. They're not mad at you. They're mad at their own failure to predict you, to define you. But they can't define what refuses to be boxed, can't measure what keeps evolving. You're not a version, you're a force. A relentless, self-generating phenomenon. They can either adapt or get steamrolled by the momentum they laughed at too long. And what's more dangerous than someone underestimated? Someone who remembers every word said in doubt and still moves with grace. Someone who doesn't need revenge, but becomes living proof that karma isn't a theory. It's a person, it's you. So let them watch. Let them try to study your steps while they trip over their own shadows. You're not slowing down for spectators. You're not shrinking for critics. You are what happens when pressure meets purpose. What happens when someone stops asking for permission and starts rewriting reality with unapologetic precision. And now, they're scared to blink. Scared that if they look away too long, they'll miss the next mutation, the next transformation, the next power shift they swore could never happen. And yet, it's already begun. What they don't understand is this isn't evolution. That's too clean, too natural. What's happening to you is a violent rupture of reality, a pressure burst from years of compression, suppression, underestimation. And now the seal's broken. What's pouring out? Not potential, not growth, dominance. A version of you so precise, so sharpened, so unbothered by their decaying projections, it renders them irrelevant before they even speak. They whisper things like changed and different, like accusations, as if change wasn't the whole point, as if staying stagnant was ever a badge of honor. You didn't change, you shed. You cracked the mold they tried to bury you in and rose with something they never accounted for. Awareness, hyper-awareness. You see now, every move, every motive, every mask. And once you see, there's no going back. They're not scared of your power. They're terrified of your clarity. Because the minute you saw them clearly, their power died, and now they're scrambling, trying to build new illusions, craft new angles, perform new versions of themselves that might keep up. But the beast mode you've entered doesn't chase. It doesn't respond. It observes, and then outpaces. It outgrows. And that's the death blow. Because people can fight enemies. They can even fight betrayal. But how do they fight someone who no longer needs to fight them? Your disinterest is more brutal than revenge. And here's the real twist. This ascension isn't loud. It's surgical, clean. You don't announce it. You move in it. Every choice you make now, a calculated disruption. Every step, a redefinition. And it's not what you're doing that's scaring them. It's the fact that you're doing it without them, without explaining, without apologizing, without offering a single hand back to those who watched you drown and drank champagne while you sank. Now they knock on the gates they swore you'd never reach. Now they quote you. Now they try to study the blueprint. But it's encoded in a language forged in your hell. They don't speak it. They can't. Because that dialect, it's written in scars, in nights you didn't post about, in breakdowns that turned into blueprints, in cold awakenings that restructured your DNA. You're not just on another level, you built another level. One they'll never access, because the password was pain. And they logged out the second it got hard. Let's talk about that, about endurance, because talent is cute, skill is useful. But endurance, that's divine. That's what separates the remembered from the forgotten. And you carried the weight when everyone else dropped it. You ran uphill with silence in your chest and betrayal in your lungs. You bled in private, rebuilt in secret, and when the time came, you emerged. Not as someone who made it, but as someone who became inevitable. And what's more lethal than someone inevitable? Nothing. Now they feel it in their bones. That sickening realization that your rise isn't a phase, that your glow-up wasn't cosmetic, that your presence isn't a trend. It's a shift, a gravitational one. And as you ascend, they're clinging to old images of you like shipwreck survivors gripping rotting wood. But the old you doesn't live here anymore. That version, gone, buried in the ruins of your last breakdown. What remains is a living monument to resilience, a walking contradiction to every label they tried to brand you with. They called you too much. Now they're not enough. They called you dramatic. Now they're trembling over whispers. They called you delusional. Now their reality is falling apart, just watching you. And still you don't speak on them. Why would you? Royalty doesn't announce absence. It simply disappears and lets the silence echo where their importance used to be. You left their table, and the feast got cold. Not because you were the loudest, but because you were the pulse. They feel that now. In the awkward pauses, the forced laughs, the weird glances when your name slips into the conversation like a ghost that never stopped watching. You are the haunting. You're what happens when someone refuses to stay where they were dropped. You're the result of pressure they thought would crush, and instead created a presence they'll never outrun. But here's the part they didn't calculate. You're still not done. You're just getting started. What they thought was your final form was entry level. The beast mode they're shaking over, that's still you warming up. Because now it's not just about proving them wrong. That was too small, too reactive. Now it's about fulfilling the threat they didn't even know you were. You are not here to exist inside their comfort zones. You're here to redefine the entire terrain. And every move you make from here on out, it reprograms the ecosystem. They'll deny it. They'll pretend they're unaffected. But every time you breathe louder, they suffocate. Every time you win again, their excuses wilt. Every time you don't react, they implode internally. Because they've got no play left. They only knew how to hurt you, not how to handle you. And now that pain doesn't touch you. They're obsolete. Let them gossip. Let them twist the story. Let them pretend you sold your soul or faked your climb or lucked into this throne. Let them burn energy explaining your name to people already watching you in silence. Because while they narrate falsehoods, you narrate legacy. While they scramble to stay relevant, you're out here building permanence. There's a difference between trending and timeless. And now they're watching that difference in real time. You didn't just upgrade. You became a mirror. And a mirror is the most violent object you can place in front of a liar. Because when people can no longer gaslight you, when you've outgrown the manipulation, when you see through instead of around, they panic. Their whole performance depends on the old version of you playing the victim. But now, you're not the victim, you're the verdict. And it hits different. It paralyzes them. They don't know what to attack now. Because you've left the battlefield. You're not there anymore. You're in the architect's chair now. You're designing worlds, not defending old ones. You're building stages while they're still auditioning for roles in a play that ended seasons ago. They'll talk about karma. What they don't know is you are karma. The walking embodiment of every consequence they prayed wouldn't land. And now, it's landing, slowly, precisely, in ways that can't be traced to you, but still bear your fingerprints, not out of revenge, but inevitability. You were always going to rise. They just couldn't imagine it without their approval. And now that you've surpassed their ceilings without knocking, their egos are hemorrhaging. Here's the kicker, though. You don't need them to collapse. You don't need them to admit defeat. Their silence is already loud enough. Their anxiety is already the confession. You've reached that terrifying level of power where you don't destroy people. You unveil them. You expose the fractures by existing. You force introspection by moving forward. And every time they try to rebuild their mask, your success melts it off again. You've become the test they keep failing. And no cheat code, no backdoor, no alliance will ever save them from the truth you represent. This isn't a comeback. It's a correction. The realignment of a reality that spent too long leaning toward cowards and manipulators and parasites. You're not rising for applause. You're rising because staying low would be betrayal now. And if that rattles them, good. They were never meant to be comfortable. Not in your presence, not anymore. Because now, they're running out of versions of you to dismiss. And the one that's coming next, the one they fear is even possible. That's the version that no longer even notices them. And that's where their downfall begins. Not in conflict, not in confrontation, but in irrelevance. Because for creatures that fed off your attention, like parasites, clinging to light. The real punishment isn't your retaliation, it's your indifference. You see, there comes a stage in this god-beast evolution where you stop proving, stop explaining, stop looking back. Not because you've moved on, but because you've moved above. Above the need to be seen, above the desperation to be validated, above the arena they still fight in, swinging at phantoms while you walk air. They still whisper your name like a spell, still try to control the narrative with recycled delusions. But they've lost the one thing that ever gave them power: proximity. Because when you stop noticing them, when you stop reacting, when you stop even remembering that they were once part of your storm, something terrifying happens. They disappear, not physically. Oh no, they're still watching, still stalking, still rewriting. But in your world, they no longer exist, and that obliterates them more than any war ever could. You went god-beast mode and left them in their human emotions. You broke the final barrier, not between you and them, but between you and your limitless self. And now they're on the outside of a kingdom that wasn't built to include them. They bang on the gates with old receipts, screenshots, dusty opinions from a version of you that no longer breathes. But the kingdom doesn't respond. The walls don't echo. And the crown? It doesn't bend for nostalgia. You've entered that cold, celestial zone where evolution becomes isolation, not as punishment, but as proof. Because people don't abandon you, they lose access. There's a difference. And now their screams aren't heard as opposition. They're static, white noise in the background of your empire's soundtrack. They can't touch you anymore. Not because you're hiding, but because you're untouchable. This is what they don't teach. That real power doesn't wave flags or scream victories. It vanishes from the battlefield completely and lets the echoes of old wars haunt the ones still swinging in the dark. You're not mad. You're not triggered. You're not plotting. You're done. And that kind of done, it's lethal. Because it's the kind where they no longer know how to hurt you. The kind where every insult feels like a whisper thrown at a thunderstorm. The kind where every attempt to bait you feels like throwing pebbles at a mountain that already moved. You've become too high for their reach, too rare for their vocabulary, too massive for their comprehension. You are gone, and it's driving them mad. But here's the most dangerous twist of it all. Your beast mode doesn't roar anymore. It radiates, quietly, consistently. It seeps through timelines, influences entire climates. While they argue, you expand. While they accuse, you evolve. While they drown in a pool of self-importance, you walk on oceans they can't even drink from. You didn't just outgrow them, you rendered them invisible. And they're losing control. Because for people like that, control was always illusion dressed as concern. They never supported, they surveilled, never empowered, only monitored. And now that they can't read you, can't define you, can't locate you in their emotional geography, they're panicking because the power they thought they had was borrowed from your former self, from the version of you that still needed to explain why you kept rising. That version is dead. You've become post-explanation, post-approval, post-revenge. You exist now in full divinity, where your movement doesn't shake rooms, it builds dimensions, where your silence is no longer restraint, it's command, where your glow isn't for decoration, it's deterrent. And now they sit in their little corners, analyzing your every step, trying to decode the magic behind your momentum. But here's the truth. You are the magic. You are the blueprint and the black hole, the spark and the inferno, the sword and the sermon. And nothing they do, will ever touch the frequency you've stepped into. Because you don't operate in revenge anymore. You operate in removal. Their karma isn't a clapback. It's your absence. The absence of your energy, your presence, your light, your chaos. And now, they feel the void, the hollow space where your energy used to orbit. And it's not filled with rage or regret. It's filled with realization that they could have honored you, elevated with you, but they chose ego, chose envy, chose noise. And now they live in a world without you. And that world is starving. Because the moment you stopped playing their games, the rules collapsed. The arena folded, the hierarchy imploded. You were never a pawn, you were the entire board, and when you walked, checkmate. And here's the beauty of it all. You didn't need revenge, because nothing destroys a manipulator faster than being forgotten by the one they swore they controlled. Now they tell stories to people who aren't listening. They chase shadows of someone who already stepped into another galaxy. They try to gatekeep your memory while you rewrite future history books without their names. You left them behind not because you hated them, but because your growth requires empty space. And you've become addicted to clarity, addicted to peace, addicted to power without performance. They perform for reaction. You move for impact. They seek validation. You build legacy. They want followers. You breed blueprints. And every attempt to tether you back to that old dimension just proves one thing. They're still orbiting a sun that stopped shining for them long ago. And they know it. They feel it in their identity crisis. They feel it in their energy dips. They feel it every time your name trends, not because you tried, but because you simply existed. You're what they wanted to be, but never had the pain tolerance to become. You walked through fire and came out liquid titanium. You survived betrayal and turned it into a compass. You faced rejection and turned it into redirection. You mastered pain so well, it now bows before you. And now, they're terrified of your next move, not because it will destroy them, but because it will erase them. You've reached the altitude where your very success becomes a spiritual audit for those who cursed your name. They can't outrun it, because it's not you chasing them. It's their own guilt crawling after them like a shadow that finally woke up. And in this final metamorphosis, something sacred happens. You stop seeing them as enemies. You start seeing them as evidence. Evidence that you're no longer who they hurt. Evidence that the pressure worked. Evidence that your isolation wasn't punishment. It was preparation. And now, you stand alone. Not lonely. Alone. With standards so high, they mistake them for ego. With boundaries so tight, they mistake them for arrogance. With power so internal, they mistake it for distance. Let them misinterpret. Let them misunderstand. Because understanding was never required for elevation, only acceptance. And now that you've accepted yourself in full God-beast mode, they no longer matter. You're not a chapter they get to reread. You're the book they'll never finish. You're not the mistake they learned from. You're the lesson they never passed. And you've graduated from needing anyone to clap. Your breath is applause. Your energy is echo. Your presence is prophecy. And from this moment on, your name carries weight in rooms you've never entered, simply because you stopped looking for doors and became the walls. Let them spiral. Let them chase. Let them drown in the noise they tried to trap you in. You're gone now. And not just gone. Ascended.